Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Odan Nerd here. Welcome back to another Sublime Text tutorial video. And the topic of today's lesson is manually installing packages in Sublime Text. Because the easiest way to augment the functionality of Sublime is by installing additional packages to augment the ones that it comes shipped with by default. And the usual way to do that is by the package control package. However, package control offers you a list of packages to install from a curated list of packages that have been specifically added to it. So what do you do if there's a package you want to install, but it's not in that list? The first time I recorded this lesson, I paused here to thank the people that got us up over the 1,000 subscriber level on the channel and promised a little bit of a 1,000 subscriber special video. And I said that, from the bottom of my heart, I did not in my wildest dreams believe or think that we could reach 1,000 subscribers. So I'm more extremely gratified than you can possibly imagine at the response to the videos that we're putting out here on the channel over the last year. So thank you so much for that. And if you're not already familiar, last week's video was actually the 1,000 subscriber special, which is why this one's not. And if that confuses you, go back and watch that if you haven't seen it, and it'll explain why I'm describing something that happened to you in the past as if it was going to happen in the future. There's also some cool information on what's coming up next in the channel, including some information on Sublime Text itself. So you're not going to want to miss that if you haven't seen it. I've linked it down below. The topic of today's lesson, although, as I said, is installing packages manually in Sublime Text. And the reason we might want to do that is because the list of packages that package control offers you is a finite curated list of packages. And what that means is not every package that could possibly exist for Sublime appears inside of that list for a couple of reasons. And the first of those is packages aren't automatically added there. The author of said package needs to request that their package be added to the list. And the second big reason for that is that when you take that step of asking for your package to be in the list, you're placed in a queue for someone to come and take a look at your package and just make sure that the quality levels are good, that it's not doing something untoward, to keep the community at safe. So we want to make sure that any packages that get into package control are useful, helpful, don't duplicate existing functionality, don't have something creepy going on or potential bugs that could cause harm. All of that vetting of code is actually done by volunteers in the Sublime Text community. So a huge round of applause to everybody that helps with that, because the list of packages and in the backlog can grow a little bit, and it can take a little bit of time for packages to appear in that list. That's all because this is a volunteer effort of users of Sublime helping other users. So part of the reason why a package might not be in there is because the package author didn't ask for it to be added to the list, and part of the reason might be that they asked but it hasn't happened yet. And how do you install that in the meantime? Well, it turns out there's actually 3 different ways that we can go about doing such a thing, and one of those is actually getting package control to install a package that's not in its own list of packages, which is by far the better option, but we're going to cover that one last, so stick around to the end of the video. For the purposes of our example here, we're going to need a package to demonstrate this with, and we're going to be using this ScopeView plugin, which is something that was originally mentioned way back in 2018 in the first common questions video on scopes and scope selectors. And it's been a long time coming. Here it is. I put it up recently on package control, or sorry, put it on GitHub, but I have not added it to package control. Let me clarify that, which is why we're using it in an example here. And I haven't added it because there are other packages that do sort of the same thing, and it's more for explanatory purposes than actual day-to-day usage. But as we'll see, if you wanted to use it for your day-to-day stuff, you absolutely can, and it doesn't matter that it's not in the list of packages that package control will natively install. And I have put a link to this down in the description of the video, so you don't got to worry about transcribing this thing. But let's go ahead and crack into how we might install this manually. Now, in order to do this, we need to know a little bit about how packages are installed in Sublime Text, and I've actually covered that in a previous lesson, which I've linked down below. So if we say anything in here that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, go down and into the description, watch that video, skip right on back to this one, and hopefully that will make it a little more clear. If not, let me know down in the comments section below. Now, the first method we're going to talk about here is installing a Sublime package file. Remember, that's just a zip file that contains the contents of a package. It has a different extension that is zip file, so Sublime knows what it is, and those packages packages go in the installed packages folder. Now, this particular example that we're doing here, there isn't an example of a Sublime package file available for this, and neither have we talked anywhere on the channel about how you might go about creating one, but that is something that's going to appear in an upcoming lesson in the future in the Plugin 101 video series, which we also run here on the channel. So if you're interested in that, use those buttons down below to thumb, subscribe, and share, and you will know when that happens, particularly if you ring the bell notification icon. So take it as read that this will work if you get your hands on a Sublime package file. So what we need to do here is get at the installed packages folder, and the easiest way to do that is to use the command palette or a menu to choose the browse packages command. That'll take you to the packages folder in whatever file system browser is responsible for doing that on your particular operating system. And once you're in there, if you go up one directory level, you'll see all of the folders that exist at the same level as the packages folder, the sibling folders, if you will. One of those is the installed packages folder. And if you go inside there, you will see some list of Sublime package files. Your list will be different than mine. Package Control tries its hardest to install packages as Sublime package files in this very folder, specifically to make it easier for you to override resources and modify them, which is also, unsurprisingly, a topic we've covered on the channel previously and is linked down in the description. So what you see here will be different than what mine is, but if you were to take a Sublime package file and drop it into this location, it will be seen by Sublime. So let's go ahead and take this file that I prepared and drop it in here. Now, if we were to switch back to Sublime and check the console, we would see a message that says that the plugins in this particular package have been loaded. You wouldn't see that if the package didn't contain any plugins, but otherwise, if you would see an error message there if something went wrong. So that tells us that this has actually been seen. Now, an important step when you're manually installing a package is to keep in mind that packages can rely on external dependency libraries. And one thing that you can do to try to make sure that everything is kosher with that is to use the package control satisfy dependencies command from the command palette after you manually install the package in this way or the way that we're going to be covering next. And that will get package control to look inside of that package to see if the appropriate information is in there to tell it about dependencies to install. And if it finds any and it knows how to install them, it will. You'll see a message and it will tell you to restart Sublime. If you don't see a message, you could check the console and you'll see a message in there that might say something like all dependencies have been satisfied. That means this particular package doesn't have any dependencies, so that's good. That's the case in this particular scenario. If you see a message in there that says that dependencies could not be found, then you're going to have to do more work. You're going to have to manually install dependencies as well. So see the author of the package. They probably have a README or a document that tells you how to install their package manually if you want to go that route. But now that we've done this, this package is fully installed. So if we went into the command palette, we could see the commands for this, and I could toggle the scope display just like we saw way back in that video so long ago. And we can see that the scope at the first character in this particular plain text file is text.plain, like we might expect. Now I've undone that installation, so we're back to where we originally started before I did that. What would you do if you didn't have access to a Sublime package file, which is not very common? Usually the only way to get your hands on a Sublime package file is by using package control to install it, because there are other methods to do so. And you might be tempted to take a Sublime package file from another user or another instance of Sublime, but be very wary about that, because remember, packages can be distinct in their content depending on whether they are for Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, or for 32-bit or 64-bit, or they might require specific versions of Sublime in order to operate, or there might be different versions of them depending on the different versions of Sublime that you're running. So you should be very careful about taking an existing Sublime package file and just dropping it into another installation of Sublime without being sure that it's okay. Now, surely it's not going to cause a huge problem, but it might not work as you expect. And this is why package control's default settings automatically download and install any packages that you have previously told it to install if they happen to be missing, to make sure that it's very easy for you to sync your settings across. But the other way we would do something like this would be to manually put files into the packages folder instead. And in this case, what we would probably do is use something like Git, because a lot of packages are available in Git repositories, either on GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. All three of those services are examples of ones we're going to use here because package control understands them as well. And that'll make more sense when we get to that third item in the list on actually installing manual packages with package control itself, even though they're not in the list. But the steps here don't necessarily require you to use Git. If you had a zip file or some other archive of this, that would work as just as well in this particular case. But we're going to do this in a couple of different ways first with Git. Now, the first thing we're going to need is an actual Git repository to clone. So I'm going to go back to the web browser and find the clone URL for this particular package of mine and copy that to the clipboard. Now, if you happen to be a Sublime Merge user like I am, then you can very easily just fire it up and tell it you want to clone a repository. Here it's just giving me that because I didn't have a repository already open. All I have to do is paste the repository URL in. The name of the package will automatically populate into the middle column, and we need to say where we want to clone this, and where we want to clone it is the packages folder. And I happen to have that particular folder pinned in my quick items because I do a lot of stuff that requires me to put stuff in and out of it. So I would recommend something like that. Remember, if you're not sure where this is, use preferences, browse packages from the menu or command palette, and the file browser will show you where it is, and then that's the folder you can use here. And once I do this clone operation, I can go back to Sublime, and if we were to check the console here, we would see that the plugin has successfully loaded, so this package has been installed, and going into the command palette would allow us to see the same command and install it, or trigger it and show that this package is installed, and it's showing this the exact same thing as we just saw. And if we were to rewind that again, if you happen to not be a Sublime Merge user, well, you probably should be if you like Sublime Text. Sublime Merge is the Git client that is made by the same developers. It is in fact very Sublime, but you don't need to use Merge for this. We could do this easily with, say, command line Git as well. And all we have to do is take that same repository clone URL and clone it manually into the packages folder. And for our purposes here, what I'm going to do is, because I'm on Windows, is use preferences, browse packages to show me where that folder is. And on Windows, I can just click right into the place that is showing me what the path is and type CMD for the Windows command prompt, and it'll open a command prompt directly in the folder that I currently am looking at, which makes it easier to find that thing. Otherwise, you'd have to manually go there, and if you're on a different operating system, this won't work, but there may be another similar method to get something like that in. And again, all we have to do is git clone and that URL, and the package will fall out into the appropriate place. Once it's done, again, we could check the console, verify that it actually has loaded properly, and when we look inside of the command palette, we will see the command there, and we can enable it, and we're good to go. Now, if the package that you're using isn't available via Git, or you're not sure how to use it and you have something like a zip file or some other archive, you could still unarchive that into the packages folder to get the files there, because when it comes to installing files manually inside of the packages folder, all you require is a folder there with the content of the folder inside of it. So if you don't have to use Git, you could say extract a zip file there if you want to. Be very careful with this, because Sublime Text requires that the name of the folder inside of the packages folder be the name of the package, in this particular case, ScopeView, and then right inside of that should be the contents of the package. So frequently, if you're using something like decompress utilities or Windows's ability to manually extract a zip file, you will end up with a folder inside of a folder that has the content. So if you look inside of your folder that you have installed the package in and you don't immediately see the contents, if you see another folder, that won't work for you. Plugins won't load, other resources will be found, so make sure you go inside that second directory, take all of the content, move them one level up. Clear as rain? Cool. While both of these methods will work for manually installing packages, there are a few things to keep in mind. The first is that some aspects of some packages require that they have very specific names. Packages can try to refer to their own content, say, for example, when they're opening their preferences for you or their key bindings. A part of that is knowing what the name of the package is. And the name of the package comes from the name of the Sublime package file, if you're installing it that way, or from the name of the folder in the packages folder. And on some operating systems like Linux, the case is important as well. Now, it can be a common thing for packages that are stored in Git repositories that the name of the repository is different from the name of the package when it's actually installed. That's one of those things that package control will take care of for you when it's installing packages. So when in doubt, you may want to double check the README or available documentation to make sure that you're renaming the the folder correctly or that the Sublime package file has the correct name. Also, remember that when you install packages manually, you're responsible for making sure that it works for your operating system, your architecture, and your build of Sublime Text, because package control isn't there to do that for you. And you probably also want to use the satisfy dependencies command like we saw earlier in the video, so that if this package declares that it requires any dependencies, package control will go out and install them for you. And if it can't do that, then you have to install those dependencies manually, and that is a little bit more of a job. But that's something we might cover in a future video. So if you'd like to see that, let me know down in the comment section below, and then make sure you use the buttons down below to thumb, subscribe, and share, and ring the bell notification icon so you know when that actually becomes available. So by and large, the best way to install packages is with package control. But how do we do that if our package doesn't appear in the list? Well, it turns out that package control primarily was designed for being able to install packages directly out of Git repositories way back in the day when Will Bond first created it. And over time, that has been streamlined somewhat to have a list of packages so that users don't have to constantly paste things in. So we actually have the ability to augment this if we'd like to. Now, in order to do this, you need to have a couple of things here. You need to have the web URL of the Git repository in question, and it package has to be in a Git repository. Now, specifically, it needs to be in a Bitbucket repository, a GitLab repository, or a GitHub repository. Any one of those three will work. Other hosted solutions, you would have to do the manual installation. But all you have to do is give the web URL for this, not the clone URL. So I'm going to go back to the browser and find the web URL for this and copy that to the clipboard. And this is going to tell package control where to actually find this package. Now, all we have to do is go into package control and use its add repository command from the command palette. And we're going to get an input down at the bottom of the window that asks us for a custom repository URL or JSON URL. And again, it mentions these three services that are supported here for this. And we're going to go ahead and paste this in and hit enter. And that is all of the configuration done. Now, if we were to actually look at your package control settings, you'll see that what this command actually did was add a repository setting if it wasn't already there, and add the URL that you pasted directly in there. So if you wanted to and you knew how to do it, you could go ahead and put it here as well. And this also in my file shows an example of using a custom repository JSON file, which you can find more information about if you look at the videos for Snappy and HyperHelp and HyperHelp Author, which are videos about the help system I created for Sublime Text. These packages allow you to have hyperlinked help directly in Sublime, and Snappy in particular might be handy for you if you're following along in Plugin 101 and doing package development, because it brings the Sublime Text plugin API documentation directly into Sublime. So go ahead and see those videos for that. But with this in place, now, if we were to go back to package control's install package command, after it finds and downloads the list of packages, we could look in there for ScopeView and we'll actually see it in the list here, because we've told Sublime that along with all of the other packages you know about, tell us about this one as well. And all we have to do is hit enter, and after a brief moment, it's going to do the exact same thing that it would have done with other packages. It downloads it, drops the Sublime package file into installed packages, and we can go into the command palette, and that command is there, and away we go. So that's the three ways that we could install packages manually. We could drop a Sublime package file directly in the installed packages folder. We could create a folder in the packages folder and put the package content inside of it. Or if it's a package that's stored in a Git repository that's publicly available on GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, we could take the page URL, tell package control about it, and then use its install package command, and it will install that package for us. Now, by far, that's the best option to take here, because if you use one of the first two, there's a few pitfalls to keep in mind. The first is that if that package requires any dependencies, you may need to install those yourself. So always avail yourself of the package control satisfy dependencies command, as we saw in the video, to get package control to see if it can find any dependencies. And if it has any problems with that, you may need to manually do more work. If you're doing that, you also have to make sure that the folder name, if you're creating a folder in the packages folder, or the Sublime package file name, is correct, because some packages require a very specific package name to be able to find their resources, so things won't work. And if you were to create a folder in the packages folder, not by using Git, but by using some other means like extracting an archive, make sure that the contents of the package are immediately inside of the folder that you created. If there's another subfolder with the contents inside of that, that package won't work if it has any plugin files in it. So take all the files and move them up one level. Hopefully this will help you in this particular regard, and if anything needs more clarification, please do let me know down in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this particular lesson. If you're not one of the people that did so, please use the button down below to subscribe and ring the bell notification icon. And otherwise, maybe use those buttons down, other buttons down there to thumb and share as you deem appropriate as well. Until the next Sublime Text tutorial video, this is ODAT Nerd asking you to please have a sublime day.